And welcome back, everyone, here to Live Now from Fox. I'm your host, Mike Pache. Thanks again for continuing to join us as we bring you the top stories of the day, live feeds, and, of course, when breaking news happens, you know we have you covered. All right, one of the big stories, including this was for a time the biggest story on FoxNews.com headlines today after an investigation by Ohio Secretary of State Frank LaRose has uncovered over 1,000 non-citizens who appear to have registered to vote unlawfully in Ohio. And LaRose says he has referred all 1,084 cases to the Department of Justice, noting that 167 of the individuals appear to have cast a ballot in a federal election since 2018. So let's bring in the Secretary of State to help break it all down here for us. This is Ohio Secretary of State Frank LaRose. Great to have you on, sir. And first off, just let us know how you were able to uncover this and really what led up to these findings.
Well, thank you, Mike. Yeah, we take this pretty seriously in Ohio. That's why when I became Secretary of State a few years ago, we created an investigative division. The law says in Ohio that it's the Secretary of State's responsibility to investigate fraud or irregularity. I looked at the office and realized there were no investigators. Really, I don't think any of my predecessors had full-time investigators. So we brought in folks with a law enforcement background. We built an investigative unit and people that could do the work of getting a subpoena for documents, putting a witness under oath, really conducting a professional law enforcement style investigation. That capacity didn't exist prior to my administration. As a result of that work, we have found, and as you can see, over 1,000 cases that have already been, over the last several years, referred to county prosecutors or in some cases to our state attorney general. Now, listen, all of these folks are busy. Maybe they've got good reasons for not taking up these cases, but these are all what I would call cold cases. They've been sitting there waiting. All the evidence is ready to look at. And so I decided, let's take this same evidence, and when it occurred in an even-numbered year, which are, of course, those federal elections, let's refer it to the DOJ. Let's see if they want to take these cases up. Again, I have this belief that when a law is not enforced, it's not a law. It's just a suggestion. And we know, of course, that there should be consequences for those who violate election laws. And so by referring these to the federal DOJ, my hope is that they decide to prosecute these cases if the case merits that. And again, that's the decision they make as prosecutors.
Yeah, it's so intriguing because when we take a look at, I mean, the numbers are startling when you have that many. And when you think about just how, when they say, you know, every vote counts, and if it's a tight race in a special, in a different county or anything that you're really thinking about, it could sway it.
Yeah, Mike, let's even flip the argument a little bit. You'll hear from the left that voter fraud is so rare, why even bother with it? I've often made the case that, you know, carjackings are pretty rare in my neighborhood, but when they occur, I certainly hope the bad guy faces justice for that, because they really can have big consequences. We have every year in Ohio elections that come down to a single vote. In fact, this is usually something we do a press release every December sharing how many elections that year came down to a single vote, or even a coin flip in those instances where it's a dead tie. Now, listen, we're not talking about U.S. Senate races and governor's races in most cases, but we're talking about things like a school board race, a city council race. Heck, we've had a couple mayor's races during my time as Secretary of State that had to come down to a coin flip. So one fraudulent vote is one too many. There's also the deterrent effect, right? Again, it's kind of like jaywalking. Most of us don't know anybody that's ever been prosecuted for jaywalking, and so people start to think, well, maybe it's not that big of a deal. Well, if people start to realize that if you mess around, you'll find out, right? People will realize that if you commit election fraud in the state of Ohio, you will face consequences for that. We've got nearly 8 million registered voters in our state. And when we have our big statewide elections, there are routinely turnouts in the multiples of millions. And so, yeah, these are small numbers that we're talking about. But this is about keeping voter fraud rare, which I would argue voter fraud is rare in Ohio. And we're going to keep it rare by taking it seriously and making sure that when someone does break the law, that they face justice for doing so.
Yeah, and that's why you are sending them to a DOJ so that they could properly take a look here at these. And Frank, what needs to happen so it doesn't even have to be found, where it could be stopped before they even tried to register or they try to vote? What needs to happen for that to really take place when we talk about election security?
Well, your timing is good, Mike, because I was in our state Senate today testifying on this very matter. Now, listen, we have a good system of voter list maintenance in Ohio. That's what I would say that really all election officials should focus on, maintaining accurate voter rolls. That means taking the dead people off the voter rolls. That shouldn't be controversial. Taking non-citizens and keeping them off the voter rolls, or if they get on, removing them promptly. And we've had a good system of doing that, but it has long relied on state data. Last year, in fact, I had to sue the Biden administration because they refused to provide federal data that gives us a more complete picture of who's a citizen and who's not. Thankfully, the Trump administration has partnered with us. They're working hand in hand with us to provide data under a thing called the SAVE Act. What we're working with our legislature to do is to streamline that process and to actually create a front-end citizenship check. What happens right now is if a county board of elections puts you in the voter rolls, we will determine if you're a citizen or not within a few weeks. We will remove you from the rolls long before Election Day, so there shouldn't be the consequences of you being able to vote. But what we'd like to get to is that front-end citizenship check. Of course, that requires a change in state law, and that's why I've been working with our state legislature to do just that. It's just another example of, I think Ohio has led the nation for a long time. I think a lot of other states should follow our example.
There you go. And let's go back to what you were saying in the beginning, how you felt that your predecessor wasn't doing anything in the beginning when it came to these types of cases. And do you feel like when they were even reported, they kind of just went into a file and never to be seen again? I mean, what's your take?
Well, let me be clear. I'm a big fan of the person that held this office before me. I think he did a great job. But going back 220 years in our state's history, there had never been a full-time investigative division at the Secretary of State's office. Nobody had ever thought of that. And so let's sort of look at how it would work in the past. Let's just give a hypothetical. Somebody saw a person forging signatures on a petition. They would report it to the County Board of Elections. The County Board of Elections would assign it to a clerk, probably an earnest, hardworking person, but not a professionally trained law enforcement person. The clerk would try to gather some information. They would turn it over to the county prosecutor. The prosecutor, a highly trained lawyer, would look at that and say, none of these witnesses were under oath. You didn't follow the rules of evidence here. I can't take this into a courtroom and secure a prosecution. I'm going to put this aside and go chase rapists and murderers, which is what most prosecutors are wired to do. And thank God we want them to do that. Likewise, in the Secretary of State's office, the job would be given to a clerk. Somebody would look at it. And again, these are not professionally trained investigators. Well, we've changed all that. What we've got is retired state troopers. We've got retired federal law enforcement officials, people that know how to investigate crimes. And in a lot of cases, we've brought in people that have a background in white collar or financial crimes, because that's what election crimes often look like. There are crimes on paper. They involve querying databases, gathering. It's not shell casings and forensics. It's more of gathering data and witnesses and talking to individuals and that kind of thing. Because we've built that full-time investigative capacity here that can help our counties as well as do the work here at the Secretary of State's office, we've got a much better chance of delivering something to the county prosecutor or to the state AG, or in the case of my referral today, to federal law enforcement. They can take that packet and actually do something with it. If you talk to somebody who's a professional police officer, they will tell you that the way that the investigation is handled in the first few hours and days of an investigation has a lot to do with whether the bad guy ever sees the inside of a jail cell. Well, it's the same way with that, with this work that we do. Those early stages really matter, and now we're able to do that work in a much more thorough way, and I believe you'll see a greater number of prosecutions, and again, that'll have deterrent effect. People will start to see this and say, you know what? I was thinking about messing around and thought I could get away with it. I know in Ohio I can't get away with it. One example is also multi-state voters. We catch those. If somebody tries to vote in Ohio and in another state, we will catch you and we'll refer you for prosecution.
And lastly, Mr. Secretary, with those referrals, have you heard anything? I know you just referred them, but do you feel that you're going to hear something in the near future from DOJ? I mean, it seems like with the Trump administration's DOJ that they would like something like this. I mean, they'll say, Mr. Secretary, we want even more cases.
I know intuitively who these people are. These are serious professionals that care about this work. And unlike the Biden Justice Department, instead of, chasing oddball things and going down rabbit holes and that kind of thing, I know that they're serious at the Trump Justice Department about going after wrongdoers that are breaking the law. And really, again, it's about making sure that all Americans know that their elections are honest, because that's what elections are really about. It's about making sure that you have the true reflection of the will of the voters and nobody else. And again, that's what we're working with our federal law enforcement partners to do now, to make sure that if somebody messes around, that they're going to face justice for doing that.
Yeah, ultimately, I think that's what good, honest people want. It doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or Republican. At the end of the day, if you go and vote, you want everything to be on the up and up, so everyone that has that equal chance to win. But they don't want to see anything nefarious going along the way where they feel like their vote is illegitimized because for their vote, maybe there's 5 others that are trying to sway it the other way, and they shouldn't even be in there.
Mike, I believe deeply that election integrity drives participation. The left has long had this tired old line that when you're going after people that violate the election laws, that somehow that suppresses the vote. It actually does the opposite of that. It reassures voters that their vote has value, that their vote really matters. We're in the final week of local elections here in Ohio, where people are going to be voting for mayors and city councils and school boards. Those come down to single digits or even a tie vote in some cases. Every vote matters in Ohio. We take that seriously. We want to see large number of legal citizens participating in our elections, and we want to make sure that nobody who is not eligible to participate in our elections is ever casting a vote.
There we go. Secretary Frank LaRose, we appreciate the time. Thank you so much. Keep us updated. We'd love to hear an update, and we know we'll probably be talking next year when midterms roll around. So, Frank, thanks so much. We appreciate it as always.
Amen. Thanks, Mike.